because otherwise we're going to have to function under the structures that currently exist. The point is that this issue for us in our profession is still there. No matter what goes on with the talking heads that are on TV, or the blogs that are continuously bombarding us with lots and lots of interpretation and opinion, the fact is there is truly a crisis on the horizon that relates to us and our profession and the organizations that we're a part of. And they are inevitable data, as you can well conclude. I've got my science background as a data-driven perspective. They are driven by data that will not change. And here's the kind of fundamental data about the structural issues facing us as we come out of the financial malaise. The math we've heard some of the particulars on, but I want to enumerate on some aspects of it that are not part of the general press conversation. The numbers are 77 million versus 44 million. The 77 million are the baby boomers, people of my generation and around my generation, that will inevitably leave the workforce. The question becomes, or has become, well, are they going to leave next year or the following year? My response to that is, it doesn't make any difference. I plan to work until I either can't function anymore or I drive off the cliff or whatever happens, whatever's sitting out there. I like this. I enjoy this. I enjoy what I'm doing. It's very fulfilling. So part of this conversation about the 77 million is, well, gee, they aren't going to be able to retire now because, like all the rest of us, their personal assets have been decimated and their retirement funds and 401ks are in shambles. But they're not going to retire in the next year. They're going to continue to stay engaged. That's true. But it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make any difference whether they retire next year, or 3 years from now, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, which by the time you get about 10 years, it probably is about the end of that stretched out kind of phenomenon. They will exit, and the numbers are 77 million. The reality of the X generation, or the next, then what you want to think about is the next high potential group of leaders are only 44 million in number. You can't create a next generation person. You can change some of the immigration laws, but that's all there are. You can create an infant, but you can't create a 25-year-old. That's all there are. So, this has two implications for structural aspects and our profession. The first is that the baby boomers are leaving, it's just a matter of timing. And the second hard data implication is that the number of Gen X available to take over. And you can argue about Gen Y and millennials, and they're coming, but they just are not experienced enough to take over those senior leader positions. So you have two implications out of this. The first is a quantitative gap. The number is 33 million, too few to fill the senior leadership positions. It's a matter of numbers. The second is there's an experience gap. And the reality is that when you look at the Labor Department's view of how people develop human capital, about 70%, this is the Labor Department's estimate and work that they've done, about 70% of the knowledge or experience that an individual operates on is related to their time in their position. That is, it's the experience component. Which means the formal educational part of it is about 30%. I think those are pretty good numbers. You could argue it's 60-40, 50-50, it doesn't make much difference. The bottom line is that time in position, the context of our learning how to be leaders and decision makers, is about experience, and it's the majority of the knowledge that we acquire. My experience at General Electric, for example, is very important in the work that I'm doing now. So the point is, there's two parts to the inevitable structural challenge that faces all of us, and what we as learning professionals have a responsibility to help address. The first are the numbers, the second are the experience. So, another piece that people have fed back to me in this conversation is, well, yeah, but the recession is changing all of that. Well, it is in the short term. For the next year, we will continue. By the way, unemployment is a lagging factor. We will continue to have increases in unemployment and the elimination of positions after the recession is over. So the economy starts to respond, and for 3, 4, 5 months, the unemployment rate will continue to grow. So people say, well, gee, this whole talent issue has taken second stage, and I would refresh for you this CEO feedback that it has not with CEOs, even though they're struggling with cash flow and risk management. But when we look at the particulars of the impact of the unemployment dynamics and the recession on the structural issue, I took, for example, that the peak of our economic activity, our unemployment rate was 4.8%. The current forecast, and I think it's pretty good, is that the unemployment rate will peak at someplace between 9 and 10%. My estimate at this time was 9%. The difference between the 4.8% and the 9%, when jobs are abundant, to the trough when jobs are maximally being eliminated, is 6.5 million jobs eliminated, which we're currently about 1.5 million to 2 million short of. So the expectations as you look forward is those monthly reports on CNBC of 400, 500, 600,000 jobs eliminated is likely to continue for some period, hopefully not very long. But even when you get through all that math, you've eliminated 6.5 million jobs out of the US economy. When you balance that against the 33 million gap, the bottom line is you still have a huge structural problem for the economy, even with the unemployment, which clearly is getting lots of attention right now. So, delaying of retirement, the recessionary aspects do not mitigate the basic structural issues that we face in our economy. Here's another piece of data that was quite interesting. This was in Business Week near about a month ago. Who are losing jobs and who is being retained? This blew me away. This is absolutely counterintuitive. It is Business Week data. It was February 9th issue, if you want to look it up, on page 50. It's on the reference on the chart. In 2008, as jobs were being eliminated, the 55 and over category actually had increasing employment, and the 25 to 54-year-old job age category actually had almost 3 million jobs eliminated. Absolutely counterintuitive. Blew me away when I saw it. The implication is that in hard times and in difficult decision making, experience is valuable. Now, the experience conversation is really about, the concept of the experience conversation is really about investing in learning and development. So the opportunity to create the knowledge that the organizations are hiring in the market here is in our domain and a challenge for our organizations. There is an urgency to develop. Lastly, the conference board. I spoke at a conference board session in February with Leslie Joyce, formerly of the Home Depot, which we have a strategic relationship with. This was a conference board quote, and I agree with this. Investment in human capital, which fundamentally is about learning and development, is the only recipe to get back on track. And again, I'm here not as a conveyor of doom and negativity, but in a discussion about the opportunity for our profession, because we are the ones that can address this. So, to compete in the future, virtually every organization is going to be confronted by the harsh reality of the experience issue. That's the one half of the departure of the baby boomers. And the demographics, that's the quantity aspect of our employment labor pool. Just to confirm that it is possible to deal with the issues on the horizon, I want to assure you that there are organizations that are aggressively and proactively developing learning programs to fill their leadership pipelines. We at Bellevue University are in conversation with a number of large, very large corporate enterprises, and are indeed in the implementation phase with 3.